Community Relations Council is engaged with this issue in two ways. First of all, for 10 years, we provided funding to support victims and survivors of the conflict. And we were privileged to do that and learnt a lot from that work about the nature of remembering, about the nature of those who have been most damaged by the past and how they can live in the future, about the nature of what the rest of society's role and responsibility is in coming to terms with our past and finding a way to acknowledge each other as having a part to play in the future. Out of that came more recent work that we've been involved in, and that is looking at the nature of commemoration and the nature of remembering the past, and finding a way to, in a creative way, how to examine those issues, how to take on board all of the narratives that are there and make room for them. We see our job as being about enabling people to come to terms with the past, reflect on the past, gather the stories of the past and find a way to live in the future.
The ongoing issues today are the unresolved issues of the past. We still have dissident activity, we still have sectarianism, and we have issues of segregation, deep division. We have many young people coming through now with transgenerational impact of the conflict through trauma, and we're still dealing with separation and misunderstandings, misperceptions of what we would term the other community. We also live in a very pluralistic society now, and unfortunately that doesn't get reflected in the society which is still very deeply divided.
We can't change the past, but we can change the future, and we can ensure that never again will we resort to violence to resolve what appear to be political differences and cultural differences.
Decade of Anniversaries offers us the opportunity to take out a set of events and look at them again 100 years on. We have a chance to go back and look at what were some of the seminal events of the 20th century that influenced this place and the tram lines that we went on thereafter.
It involves a decade that was packed with events, and packed with events that changed Ireland and shaped Ireland for the rest of the 20th century, and in many ways still casts long shadows over our relationships in this island together.
All of the events that are so important, because whether or not we claim them as our own, they happened and they had an impact on each and every one of us today.
In the process of looking at the decade, by going back to that more distant kind of past, there's a kind of safety mechanism about it. But by exploring that decade, it has created, I think, for many people, a kind of prism by which they've even felt they have permission now to begin to look and explore a much more recent phase of conflict and violence, and that normally is much too raw and much too close to talk about.
History has as much to say about the present as it does about the past, so it very much depends on the attitude you bring to the task in hand. We've been really privileged to work with people who have taken a really serious look at the events of the past and how to reflect on those in an open and engaging and inquiring way. Out of that, we've discovered that there are many, many stories that weren't privileged in the telling of the past, so the regathering of things that happened that actually got lost in the myths or narratives that we tend to tell each other about who we are and what we represent.
Commemorations have more to do with, I think very often have more to do with psychology than they have with history, because commemorations are shaped by current needs, current fears, current anxieties. And the past can be shaped very much in the form of the present. The commemorations are going to happen. They're going to happen anyway. The big question was, how were they going to happen?
It's that we consciously try to figure out how these things were connected and how one led to the other. And they didn't just suddenly appear. and to have some empathy for the position of people who lived through that period, and in a sense some empathy for how would it feel like to stand in someone else's shoes.
The challenge was, well, if we're going to commemorate, then let's not just put the commemorative event on the table. Let's also put our vision of the future on the table.
The fact that people are seeing those events as interrelated, that is progress. Because when I was growing up, those were entirely separate things. History is about telling stories, to get a broader sense of who we are, so that we have the possibility of moving forward into the 21st century as a people that are not quite as divided as we are, and to gain and regain some sense of how interconnected our histories are.